because it's so much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than our ant brains can understand the vastness of what's happening here. Um, is that we're connected to everyone in the afterlife that we are here. Not only everyone you know closely, but everyone you have ever seen before. Everyone you've ever passed on the street is within this same energy field of life from the same place that you are. Like there was really a sense that came through in one of my journeys that anyone you've ever known, you've known in death as well on the other side.
Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is Nella, and welcome to my podcast, Ethereality. Holden, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to hear about your near-death experience and to share that with my audience. So why don't you start from the beginning?
That sounds good. Thank you for having me. My name is Holden Lee, and when I was 17 years old, I had a near-death experience that changed my life completely and sort of shaped pretty much every situation and choice I made since. And basically what happened was I was in high school. It was summer, and I was driving home from work for the day with a buddy. We were working at Subway. I had to get home by, it was, like 5 o'clock at night. I was supposed to go to an SAT prep class, if I remember, ACT, SAT, one of the two. And I did not want to go. So I said, miss the exit and we can drive up a few exits, turn around. By that time, I'll get home late enough where my mom won't make me go. And so he did. And we're in his 91 Chevy Blazer, which was old even at the time. Drives up a few exits, gets off, and it's starting to rain out. And he's circling back over the highway, getting on the other on-ramp. Starts to speed up, truck starts to fishtail. I was 17, he was 16, so he was like a brand new driver. I think he went to hit the brake and he hit the gas. He just hit the gas straight off the highway, like flooring it. I think you go to floor the brake, and instead he just floored the gas.
I've heard of a lot of people doing that.
Okay, especially if you're young, right?
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, so like the last thing I remember was the car running into this fence and starting to turn sideways. And everything just went into slow motion at that point. And these are the most profound three things that went through my head. And it's hard to like impress upon people how much they are tattooed on my being. It was, you're going to die now. And it was just this matter of fact nature in which it came through. It's just stating fact, you're going to die now.
The way you're stating it, you're going to die as if it's somebody else said that to you. Because
Very much.
typically you would be like, I'm going to die.
Right, right. Yeah, it was very much you're going to die now. The second was I wish I could have said goodbye. And that one came with a flash of faces. I saw my parents and I saw my best friend Dave, and I saw them smiling at me, kind of like flashes. There were probably other people, but there were just flashes. And then the third that came through so strong was, but they will understand. And that one was so funny because it was like, you're going to die. Wish I could have said goodbye, but they will understand. And the third came with a subtext that I didn't hear or feel. It was imprinted on you, but they will understand didn't mean that they will understand now or in life. It meant they will understand in death. It was that you can't understand death until you're there. And that in death, you were not mourning like you do in life. So you felt momentarily bad that you were leaving. It was like, oh, shit, I'm leaving everyone behind and they're going to feel that. But it was a momentary because you were just imprinted with this knowledge that in the next moment they were with you again. That you didn't like grieve for the living in death because you understood immediately that they were with you in the next moment, that life was a flash. So those things were just imprinted in that instant. And then the next thing I know, I'm floating and I'm just wrapped in complete peace. I've always said bliss fails to describe what it was. Just no worries, no concern, the warmth of the universe blanketed in everything. and there's just this white glowing light. It didn't feel like a tunnel situation that you hear people talk about. It felt like an entity situation, like a spirit guide or angel or God, whatever. I mean, hard to know, but it was definitely something. And it was just wrapping me in this enveloped warmth. And I was there for a while and I was floating with it. And then boom, I wake up in the car, upside down. We'd rolled off the highway into a business parking lot, like flipped a bunch of times. And I was hanging upside down and I just had blood in my eyes. And I remember the glass was all shattered on me. They actually were like pulling out glass from my face in the ambulance and stuff like that. But I was just hanging there, totally in shock. I knew where I was, but I knew where I'd just been. And I had this very strong feeling that I didn't want to be alive. I had just felt the warmth of the entire universe. I had a good childhood, but I fought depression and anxiety and stuff like that for a long time. And that didn't completely stop after this. It got worse for a long time, actually. And that's part of the story. But yeah, I was like, oh man, almost got out. That was kind of the sense that I had. It's like I almost got out and I just felt like the energy of the entire universe and God wrapping me up. And all of a sudden I'm here hanging upside down. So, well, my other buddy, he was able to crawl out of the car. I couldn't because it was so crushed on one side. But I remember just hanging there, kind of in shock. I remember seeing like radiator fluid falling out of the engine and then paramedics sort of crawling in through the back and were able to kind of pull me down and wedge me out. And yeah, went to the hospital and we were okay. Of course, they did the obligatory. If you hadn't been wearing your seatbelt, you'd be dead. That was the day itself. I mean, the story really kind of continues from there until now, well over 20 years later now.
Near-death experiencers have this isolated moment where it's like a highly concentrated experience, super profound and life-changing. Whereas there's been points for me that I was kind of envious of near-death experiencers because it's just like, oh, like it has an allure to it, you know?
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting too that my experience was significantly less concentrated because it has been spread out throughout the entirety of my life. Yet, if you look at the magnitude of my spiritually transformative life and those experiences, if you condensed all of that, I feel like it would be equal to how profound a near death experience is. Once you have that click,
Yeah.
once you are awakened to that, the rest of your life is spiritually profound.
Right.
Because and then
100%.
you just start acquiring those little micro experiences that are profound in their own little ways, like all the little synchronicities and how you connect to the universe and you understand more dynamics of it. It just opens up blossoms, I guess.
Absolutely. Start learning how to see things with the right eyes and how to know what's sort of revealing itself, I feel like, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you had your experience, and then you said, and then the story kind of continues for the next, what did you say, 20 years?
Yeah. And you've spoken with so many of these people, and I've watched a few of the videos here and there, and some of it rings really true, and some of it you're like, wow, I didn't have that, but who's to say, everyone's having their own experience. And that's the fascinating part about it. I love to hear from you on being someone who has been present for so many of these stories, your sense of what's going on, because you get everything from, the body's probably in the hospital over the bed, which is, I feel like probably more of an ejection from the body than mine. I've always felt that for a lot of people, we underestimate the power of the brain. And, there's the placebo effect. We can literally heal ourselves by believing that we're healed. That's a power
Mm-hmm.
that I think is uniquely human. And I think that's direct God power. That is the
Absolutely.
power of advanced consciousness. And it's a beautiful thing. It's so disregarded in our society, which is so sad that it's so disregarded. So we disregard our very experience of miracles. I think the brain has chemicals within it that can release upon a moment of near death. They talk about DMT being inside the brain, even in the pineal gland, and that can release in the moment. I think there's several other chemicals. So I think a lot of this might happen in this conscious and subconscious in those split moments. And I feel like some of that is why you get stories of certain people experiencing very hellish moments because maybe their subconscious is filled with like a vengeful God from childhood or, whatever, just like a hardcore fundamentalist Christian upbringing where if you do any wrong, there's going to be that element.
Yeah, I have come to find most people who have a near-death experience that had a really strict Christian upbringing do initially have a hellish experience.
Really?
Yeah. Like I
See,
interviewed somebody earlier today. She had a really strict, strong Christian upbringing. And when she had her near death experience, she felt that descent and that fear and that despair creeping in. And it wasn't until she shifted her awareness and was like, wait, this is the wrong way. And this is unjust. I don't deserve this. All that dissent, that darkness, and that despair and fear just kind of vanished. And she found herself in that void.
interesting.
Yeah. And then she had her near death experience started from there. And I think it's the stories that we tell ourselves is ultimately what crafts our experience on the other side.
Right. Yeah. And that's so fascinating because that's what you just said kind of confirms what I've thought for a long time, even about mine. Because I was raised Catholic, but my family was pretty liberal in socially and it wasn't too strict. So, and there was never a moment really within my experience that there was
Negative.
anything other than brilliance. Yeah. It was
Mm-hmm.
just pure bliss is like how you could describe it. Yeah. Have you ever interviewed anyone who has been in a coma?
Yes.
What has that been like? What have they talked about in that?
I know that a lot of people have had their near death experience at some point throughout the duration of their coma. And I've heard of somebody say that while they were having their near death experience, they still had an awareness of their body and what was happening around their body, their loved ones that came to talk to them and to connect with them, that they could feel the prayers while they were like way off into space, that there was still that connection that they had to their body. And they said that your loved ones that are in a coma, they hear you. They know what you're saying and they're aware of it.
Yeah.
Even if they're not hearing with their ears, their spirit knows,
Right.
essentially, which
Yeah.
I thought was really interesting too.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, from what I experienced, and I've experienced some strange things. Yeah, when my mom died, the night she died, I've heard people say they're closer in death to certain parents or something than they were in life. And I was close to my mom, but in death, I think she's helped me more. The night she died, we woke up in the middle of the night to go over to hospice. She had a pretty rapid bout of cancer. And I was walking by the chair where she always sat on the phone. I was going to the garage with my brother to drive over there, and the phone just rang. And it was like 3 in the morning. And I picked it up, and there was no one there. I hung up, didn't think anything of it, went over there, and we were there for a while with the body and everything, and got home with my brother. And I had asked anyone, I was like, who called? And they're like, no one called. And I got home and I checked the phone. There was no record of the call on the caller ID. There was no record of it even incoming. And it was just like literally as I was walking by that chair, it rang. I just feel like, yeah, your people are around you at all times and they can check in on you whenever. And there's so much more to understanding energy and dimensions. There's more than we just kind of can see, obviously. And I think that's what all these experiences prove, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even you just saying that, telling the story about the phone call, like my hair was like standing on ends. I'm like goosebumps over here. Like, whoa. To me, that's like an indicator for sure. I feel that on a spiritual level more
Yeah.
more than even just observing it.
Another fun one that happened was at her funeral. She hated the incense that the priest would swing, hated it, despised it, like talked about it many times. And at her funeral, the priest goes to light that and he sits there for 10 minutes trying to light it. It was a pretty nice full funeral in a pretty large church. And he finally gives up. Catholics are very about the sacredness of, the act. After the funeral, we're talking to him and he apologizes like profusely for that not lighting. And I remember my dad and my brother just looking at each other and like kind of smiling. It was just like so funny that like it was the only time that's ever happened. And my mom hated that stuff. So I was like, she did that. Like she
I
totally
love
did that.
that.
Yeah,
Oh, she totally did.
yeah. It was, yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of interesting stuff like that.
Back to your experience, I loved the third insight that you got, that they will understand.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because that sentence, I have a similar experience.
Okay. Yeah. What happened?
Well, I had this relationship, a romantic relationship, and a very strong attachment to this man. And I feel like one of the turning points in my experience letting go was when I realized that. Because, oh my gosh,
Huh.
I wrote something on my hand earlier today and I didn't know why I wrote it. And I just realized
What is it?
it says, be okay with not being understood.
Interesting.
And what it was in the relationship was that we could not see eye to eye. No matter how hard we tried, we could not see eye to eye. And I had to let go of that connection because it was toxic, right?
Yeah.
I had to be okay with not being understood. And I chose that distance, even though I didn't want to,
Yeah.
but it was so hard for me to walk away from it, not getting him to understand. We all crave being understood, right?
Right. Right.
I realized that he was going to understand someday. And that someday being when he's on the other side.
Interesting.
Yeah, because of, being able to see your life review. Not only do you get the opportunity to see all the experiences that you've had and feel all the feelings that you've felt, you also have this multi-dimensional perspective where you can see and feel and understand what the other people involved in the situations that you're viewing as well. So he couldn't understand me in life, but in death, when he has a multi-dimensional perspective on the situation, he will understand. And realizing that is really one of the major keys of letting go for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, because I feel like that is exactly what it is. And not only that, I have a strong sense through, we haven't really gotten into it, but I have a lot of experience in psychedelics. And so not only have I had my near death experience, many DMT trips, the following morning after my near death experience, I woke up with energy shooting through my body. Full on Kundalini awakening is what I would later learn happened to me. And that is a yoga practice, a meditation practice where sort of unleash an energy within your body. But it does happen to people apparently at near death experiences. So this happened to me the day after my near death experience. And it really like threw me for a loop. Years later in healing through psychedelics, all these things started tying together through sort of deep psychedelic journeys. What you talk about, like life review, there was such a sense of that in some of the things I've undergone because it's so much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than our ant brains can understand the vastness of what's happening here. Um, is that we're connected to everyone in the afterlife that we are here. Not only everyone you know closely, but everyone you have ever seen before, everyone you've ever passed on the street is within this same energy field of life from the same place that you are. Like there was really a sense that came through in one of my journeys that anyone you've ever known, you've known in death as well on the other side. And we play roles for each other. So when you talked about this ex of yours, I've heard other people say this, but long before I was even listening to anyone talk about this stuff, I just intrinsically knew a lot of these things. yeah, we play roles for each other almost in a way. We help each other overcome, and we do this a lot. A lot of people don't like to hear about reincarnation, but there is very much a sense that we do come back here, maybe not linear in linear time. I don't know. Maybe it's not even the same type of thing, but we do kind of come back here and keep replaying these roles. And like if you're shitty in one life, you're gonna be shit upon in another life. And you're just working your way through some kind of up level of consciousness, of understanding for what purpose we can all guess. And I feel like anyone who says they absolutely know is just working on ego. But there's some masterful, beautiful play at work here. That's always the sense that I've gotten, tying in the near death experience and then through a DMT trip, meeting very much the same entity that was there. It was just downloaded in me
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Tell me about
that
that.
it was my first time doing DMT. I'd started my healing process. Briefly, I'll go the quick version, have my near death experience. Wake up the next morning, have a Kundalini awakening. Literally have energy always running through my body. And I'm talking buzzing head, down to the spine, like
Did your all
crazy.
your watches break?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was very much the sense that like energy was a thing. No, but and it was very weird. All of a sudden, crazy empathy. Everyone could feel their energy. A sad person would sap me. An excited person would just boom, burst me full of life. I know it sounds weird, but it was almost like you could read people's thoughts. You knew what they were going to say before they did a lot of the time. And it messed me up. I was 17 years old, and I said it before, but I was just a kid trying to figure out how to date a girl. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like awkward. I was awkward. And all of a sudden, I'm just like kind of a super freak. I didn't have a family I could really talk to. So I really closed off. So my near death experience sort of led to like depression, alcohol, drug abuse, me leaving the family and moving across the country and basically starting a whole new life where no one knew me. Well, I tried to basically squash whatever the hell was going on in me. And then it led to like antidepressants, like everything, like, near attempts. So I wouldn't say like everyone's kumbaya, you had a near death experience. I feel like mine, maybe not the experience, but what followed was too much for me at the time. And I'm sure you've spoken to some people about Kundalini.
Well, they don't usually frame it as the Kundalini experience,
Okay.
but having that sort of an experience following the NDE is very common. It's
Really?
very difficult for people to integrate the indescribable essence of the other side. Our society generally, I mean, it's better now that we're having these conversations and, it's kind of a popular topic now, but society in general, up till recently, has been super against this stuff. Like you could end up in a psych ward if you talked about it, especially with people's upbringings and stuff. They were conditioned to believe that this stuff is not real, that this is impossible. There has to be like some sort of scientific, the doctor said,
Yeah.
explanation. There's chemicals in the brain. You were having a dream experience, or you were on medications, or whatever they want to do and say to kind of brush aside the fact that they had this experience. But people who actually have been there, they can't
Yeah.
say that this isn't real. They can't say that, oh, that was a dream, because it was way more real than a dream. It was more real than a real life.
Right. Yeah, that's the sense. It is. It's like this is the dream. That's where you're from. That's
Yeah.
home.
So
Yeah.
it shatters people's sense of reality. And so then coming back from that and having to completely cultivate 100% new lens to view life through, it's so difficult because you have to lose everything that you've identified with prior,
Yes.
and then you have to rebuild that. And there's this time where you're just nothing, right? If you lose everything that you identify with, what are you? Who are you? Why are you here? It's just this shedding away of all these layers of indoctrination in life and culture and religion that It's not easy.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. You just couldn't buy into the shit anymore. You
Mm-mm.
just saw everything for what it was, whether it was the government, corporations, greed, just wealth, the layer of what made up our society was just nonsense. And it all avoided the truth of our existence and our reality. I was actually going to intern for a financial company following summer. My brother-in-law owned a financial company. I was like, yeah, I'll just, go do some numbers, make some cash. It'll be good. Buy our boat. After that, no, I was done. I couldn't do any of it. And I still have trouble to this day. I can't do anything purely for a financial purpose. I feel like I live a truthful life, but I'm also like, yeah, I just don't have it in me, the ability to like do anything that's just like straight up, hey, let's make some money, you
Well, that's
know?
because your soul alignment is not tied to a monetary value. It's like
Yeah.
what you're called to do. For me, what
Yeah.
I'm called to do, I can barely pay my bills, but I am so happy. I am so happy
Good.
having so little because I
Good.
know that what I'm doing is in alignment with my soul. That's the case too for near death experiencers is they're like what made sense to fit into society prior to your experience no longer makes sense. So going to a job at a corporation or something that is really just a massive sacrifice of time and energy with very little reward.
Yeah, for
Uh,
what?
yeah, for
Yeah.
it does not do anything to satisfy your soul.
Yeah. 100%. I couldn't agree more with that
So
statement.
what's more important upon returning to your body once you've had this like awakening is finding a path that gives you a sense of fulfillment in service to society in a way where you're connecting with people on a deeper level, in a way where you can help people open their eyes and understand who they are and the magnificent and beautiful beings that each and every single one of us are. It's a shame that so many people walk around not knowing who they are, not knowing that they're connected to every single person, connected to the life force of the universe of God.
I love the passion you speak with about that. Yeah, 100%. 100%. You specifically, and what I'm trying to do now is do my small part to open consciousness more to fix the show that we're in, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if we all just do our small part to do that, like and build together, the power should be unstoppable because the power of good and truth and light and life is just such a strong, the power of God, the power of Jesus, it's such a strong power. And Earth is like this low vibration frequency. And we're just living in some strange portion of it right now. A lot of people's lifetimes, this is the biggest show we've seen where people have just completely lost their way with greed, whether it be social media or the media or news or wars or like whatever, pharmaceuticals, everyone's on too many prescription drugs. It's like everyone's just numb, everyone's asleep. This
Right.
entire society is asleep, but people are waking up. You know what I mean? You can feel it. You're doing your show, and I can feel it in the people I talk to, and people are waking up, and people want to wake up. And there's a fight against waking up because it's not profitable
Agreed.
to
Yeah.
the corporations, to the government, to the people who are making a lot of money from keeping you a victim, from keeping you asleep.
Mm-hmm.
They are profiting and they want compliancy in a population. It makes it easy to control. But yeah, people are waking up and it's happening. You're kind of seeing it all over the place. And after I started healing through psychedelics, one of my friends put me in touch with a friend of hers, and I started talking to these people and meeting with these people and sort of having psychedelic experiences with these people where I'd watch over them.
If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you've enjoyed my content before, or maybe you're new here, but you like it, drop a comment and let me know you're here. I would love to get to know my audience. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to the content.
I never really talk about it, and I've written it about it. I'm never going to mention a name, but I ended up at this billionaire's ranch outside of San Francisco to see him through a psychedelic experience. It's weird how this all just like worked this way up a ladder of wealth. And it is eventually why, like I said, I was like, I'm out of here. I can't do this. They like kept putting me in touch with more people. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Like they were paying me to come out and like have these experiences with them. And then I'd spend the weekend with these people.
I have gone to barter fairs
Yeah.
and stuff, and I've had my moments of being a fry guide.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what do you mean by that exactly?
Um, Being able to facilitate an experience for somebody, help cultivate a space for them where they feel safe and
Okay.
supported, and
Yeah. Okay. I've never heard
kind of
that say I've never heard the saying.
throw out some really profound things and make
Okay.
them go, oh.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I've never heard that. That's funny. I've never heard the saying. That's funny that you've done it too. So
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I was at this guy's house for a weekend and to know me, I don't really give a shit about people's feelings in a way that not bad, but like even with my little YouTube channel, people email me and a lot of times they're like, I think I give pretty blunt advice. Here's what you do to stop feeling like shit. And I'll just throw out 10 things. You know what I mean? Working out, quitting drinking, stop smoking weed, stop doing these things that suck from your energy. There's very basic things, nutritional deficiencies, that they can take care of. But like this guy was super unhappy and he had this profound moment. He was talking about how much he gives away, how much wealth he gives away in the aftermath, trying to be like, why am I not feeling very much a sense of I'm not feeling my purpose or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and giving away, I mean, obscene amounts of wealth. I said one right doesn't X out a wrong. Like, so I knew some of what this person did. I knew like in their manufacturing process, paying people pennies in foreign countries to do labor for you. It has to be holistically. You can't give away something on this end while making it on the backs
Right.
on this end and feel
Yeah.
like that's going to align with any kind of Zen spiritual awakening. You have to treat people right on all sides of this process. And so we talked about, things like that. It just, I don't think it ever occurred to this person that type of thinking, but it was also, the constraints of a capitalist society.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
top of that, yeah, I happen to know that this person retired from that position within 6 months of our meeting. I'm not going to say it had anything to do with me, but I think it had just something to do with his psychedelic experience, most likely.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I thought that was interesting. I mean, they were a little older too, and I think kind of ready to transition out. But yeah, I hear a lot of people talk about the wealthy or the wealth gaps, and they think it's all some big conspiracy out to get them. And I think it's just a lot of little children trapped in the same game together. And a lot of these guys, like, it feels like their parents are still their babysitters, on some level, like these
Mm-hmm.
billionaires. The head bad, like negative energy is coming from Wall Street as a system in our society. I've met with a lot of like these high net worth people, and they're just a lot of lost people just playing the same game, and they're just on a different leg of it. And
They have a
yeah,
completely different frame of reference.
yeah,
Yeah, the things that their identity is wrapped around is completely different than somebody in like a lower class.
100%. And they're not happy. Go to like South America or go to Africa, and the happiest people
Have the
you
littlest.
meet are living in a hut. You know what I mean? Like that's where it's at. That is where it's at. Like the poorest American is still wealthier. Now, I don't think they have it better because being poor in America is a tough thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if someone would trade that for living in a hut because of our conditioning, but a lot of people might.
I like my bed. It costed
Yeah.
$1,500. I will not trade it out for a pile of straw, but
Right. Right.
I do believe there's significant insight to draw from humbling yourself to that extent. I would like to do that. I would. I spent 6 months living out of a minivan.
Okay.
I wasn't forced into the situation, life circumstances. It was definitely a decision that I made. I put all of my stuff in a storage unit, got rid of everything I didn't need, put all my essentials in a minivan with my cat, and then took off. And
Okay.
I was very attached to my mattress.
Yeah.
Also, the conveniences of daily living. Everything that I wanted to do required many more steps than it would have prior. You could just wake up in the morning and you probably have a bathroom attached to your bedroom. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but like a lot of people,
Right.
I didn't have those luxuries. Like I didn't have that convenience. And I embarked on that journey knowing that I would grow in appreciation for the conveniences that I have today.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I realized that like a minute ago, a while ago, actually, that you started telling about your DMT experience. And then I don't think we finished that.
Yeah. I feel like I got us away from Should I go back in?
Yeah.
Okay.
You encountered the same entity.
Yeah. So that was my first time and that was 5-MeO DMT, which is toad venom. I mean, that's a pretty intense version. I mean, it's all intense, no doubt. DMT itself is much more visual. And I have this weird thing where I think it's part of because I had a near death experience. Every time I do 5-MeO DMT, I just rock it into like the absence of time. And I just am sort of sitting in space, not alive. You're just sort of an atom, is how I could describe it. And you're just there. You're not your body. You don't know where your body is. You're gone. You're blasted off. Your ego's gone. I've talked to a few people that have that kind of experience, but mostly it's not like that. And I always wonder if it's because I had a near death experience. Because on my first time, I was up outside of a Donner Pass, kind of near Lake Tahoe area in California. And I was with a buddy of an ex, and we were hiking and camping. And yeah, I wasn't even expecting to do it. And I had just come off like this massive mushroom mega dose. I don't know how much you know about psilocybin in that, but it was like a 15-gram mega dose, which is a hero's journey is 5 grams. So 15 grams, talk to God, spent 6 hours in hell. It was a rough event,
Wow.
but life altering. But anyway, so we're on the shores of one of these lakes and he breaks it out and he asked if I want to do it. No, I was not sure. I'd wanted to, but I was like, but he knew what he was doing and it was a perfect setting. I was just like, okay, let's do it. And so we're vaporizing it and I blast out and it's just flashes of color. And then I'm out of my body. It's like I died. That's what you're feeling as you're shooting out. You're like, oh, shit, I died. I just died. And then this light just starts floating at me through the darkness. It was like, what are you doing here? Not, we're waiting for you. Not, we expected you. Like, what are you doing here? Let's come over and check you out. Everything was turning white around me. And just that same blissful state from near death was just like in me. Somehow it was downloaded. People talk about having just information downloaded that like I was with you when you rolled off that highway. And there was also like a sense that I don't expect to see you here again. And then I came out. I did see some weird things that time, but I came out. I remember just laughing. I was just laughing and full of joy, laying down, laughing. And yeah, it was amazing. It was so powerful because, why would I even be thinking that? Unless it's some deep subconscious seed from that moment. But people, you don't have a sense of you're alive or your ego when you're on DMT, and at least if you fully blast off.
I can't say that I ever have, but I've had a DMT experience and I can
Okay.
definitely say that like self-editing part of your consciousness, the self-editing part is ultimately the ego. I had very little, if any, awareness of the fact that I was a human experiencing this trip. It was really just like you're immersed into the experience,
Yeah.
really. You are
Yeah.
the experience.
Right. You're the experience.
Yeah.
That's like how you describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from. I know it wasn't like your consciousness, it wasn't your subconscious. It was beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a miracle in a lot of ways. I did psychedelics in high school a couple times, college. maybe a couple times with the very much sense that we're just hanging out, but it was like healing later on after someone close to me brought me into this world and was, we're going to get you right. And this is what you need. I personally don't recommend it. I'm not going to say, hey, go do it. That's what I did. And it worked for me. But after I started experimenting in that world, I healed myself. I tapered off at antidepressants, anxiety meds, stopped drinking, stopped smoking, was never depressed again. I mean, I was an anxiety nut. I shook handing the barista at Starbucks my credit card from social anxiety.
Wow.
Like bad. I was anxious. It all stems back near death, Kundalini. Like I worked my way to a bad place over several years, and
And then
I
you
start
worked your way back
back
utilizing psychedelics.
utilizing psychedelics. And I always say I walked the line. I walked that line. I got to dark
Clearly.
places. Yeah. But I was saved. That born again term you hear people say, I don't, it is what it is, but I was saved and psychedelics saved me. I mean, I had this experience where I was up in Washington and I took a giant bag of golden teacher mushrooms outside of Sequami area.
Snoqualmie.
So yeah, it was near there. And I went into the woods for like, it was a little over 5 weeks with these mushrooms and, my gear. This is when I was coming off a really dark point in my life. And I was like, I'm going to do this. My journey to self discovery, and I'm either going to die or I'm going to be saved. That's how I went into those woods. And I love those woods.
I love
It's
that.
so amazing up there. It's so amazing. Yeah,
It really is.
after you spend time in there, you're just like, and especially on psychedelics, you're just like, I know why people believe in elves and gnomes. And like you 100% get it. And I was basically taking massive doses of mushrooms for 5 weeks and spilling out the worst of your fear. And I mean, the darkness of the universe within you and all of this. And by the end, by like week 2, week 3, you're having entities like they were with you and they were like whispering to you. And it was like, you're probably half crazy, but it was beautiful. And I walked out of those woods. Like you could say it's just crazy, but I walked out of those woods completely healed. No more social anxiety ever, ever again, ever again. Of course, once in a while you feel a little like if you're not a little nervous for things, then that's a different story. That's normal. But no, and I never drank again. I never touched really any. I mean, psychedelics I would touch for sure. That went on, but like street thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
things you shouldn't, things that aren't good for you.
Things that are like lowering your frequency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things that are destroying you, not elevating you. Yeah, so you could say I went crazy for a month, but I didn't. I walked out and I was like, that was refreshing. Like felt good. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, I'm healed. And
Well,
then
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, people now are recognizing the medicinal uses of microdosing.
yeah,
And I think that that is on a micro scale more appealing to the masses, considering it's not such a
blunt
violent,
force.
sometimes
Yeah. Oh, 100.
violent
Yes.
change. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of people that have stuff against using plant medicines and whatnot, but like I don't see it. I respect everybody's opinion, like, but I also have personal experiences that to me, it kind of makes me feel like if just everybody ate some mushrooms on the entire planet, that
Yes.
world peace accomplished.
It would be a different world overnight.
It
It would
would.
be a different world overnight. Yeah. I do worry about big business, big pharmas. There's like multiple like big groups in stage 3 clinical trials for psilocybin now. They're trying to mainstream it. I'm mixed on this. I'm like, well, are they just going to make it another American product that takes away the spiritual aspect of what it really is? Or is just that good for people? If you just go to Walgreens and, and fill up script for, psilocybin and you're doing microdoses or a little heavier doses, I'm sure you're not doing any hero journeys. but you're detached from the essence of the spirituality behind it. Like the meditation apps, even that you see, that it's just like they've got a whole different segment of society, just like, I'm taking my 5 minutes of now. And it does work physiologically, it works to calm people down, but they're doing it almost without the spirituality, it seems to me. But maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe the spirituality is ingrained in it and it's good for all anyway. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on
Commercializing
that?
it, I
Yeah, I
guess.
hate the commercialization, of course, of
Yeah.
everything, but
Well, I mean, marijuana is now legal in a lot of states. Has that had a negative or different impact on how it is affecting people?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard some studies lately that they're finding that it's not all. And I've always thought this, and I've gone through heavy smoking times and edible times in my life, but I've always thought you're abusing it. It's another plant medicine that's not to be abused. It's sacred, and we made it plain. And they're finding that there are studies now that it's having some repercussions on like younger generations and the mind and stuff like that. It's not all the fun and games that we're trying to pretend it is long term.
Actually, yeah, you're right. I definitely don't see it as in any way a sacred thing to do.
And it should be when you do it once in a blue moon, it's such a different thing.
You're right. It definitely should be.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
It,
we've totally.
plant medicine, if it fits in that category, it's like, why have we removed the sacred aspect of it? Is it just simply because it's commercialized? But I feel like that aspect was removed before it was even commercialized, maybe just because it was so popular.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think that aspect's been removed for a long time. And there's ketamine therapy.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And near-death experiencers are using ketamine for therapy.
Oh, interesting. What do they
Yeah.
say?
There's a couple people I want to interview about it.
Okay.
Do you know who Brooke Grove is?
No.
She had a near-death experience and she also experimented with the ketamine therapy to see if it would help her integrate more of her experience. But I haven't heard her story about that. So I don't really know anything about it, but I do want to talk to her about it.
Yeah. I wonder what
Yeah.
that's doing for that. I mean, it's probably putting perspective on everything. And
That's not just her, that's like a thing that's been going around the near-death experience community.
sort of when I brought up my thing that happened after and the energy and people kind of not being able to function well in society, are you saying that they're looking at like ketamine because of that reaction to try to quell the like
Yeah.
PTSD or whatever?
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, like I said, it's just so difficult to integrate the experience. It's
Yeah.
like you have to shed all these layers of your societal conditioning, like how you were raised, culture, religion, everything that's influenced you up to that point, everything that you've identified with is sort of stripped away. I think it assists in that process of creating a new lens to view life through and recognizing when everything's shattered, how to pick up the pieces, essentially,
Right.
how to rebuild.
Yeah. That would have been interesting to think about, so many years ago when I had this. I can't like stress enough. When I say energy, it was just, if you meditate, you close your eyes and just through the forehead, just third eye, just boom, energy. You did not know what to do with it. And I still have that today. It's more subdued. And I do a lot of trance meditation, especially after psychedelic journeys. I just did a YouTube video that I released today that was about going into trance meditation on the nature of time after I did a DMT trip well on 5 grams of golden teachers. Then we were out in the desert and I laid down on the desert floor. I had my sleeping bag and a gallon of water. And I brought out my phone. I just put on record and I went into trance meditation for like 4 hours and just like meditated on the nature of time. And I have a video that I just put out today that's I like read the transcript of what came across over like the 3 hours. But I was like, that's awesome. Like what came through is just basically like we are the time. You are the time. You are here like for the perfect amount of time. It's out of our control. This idea that we might get our time cut short. It's a lot more detailed. I'd read it, but I don't have it in front of me. But it was, yeah, just like crazy stuff coming about the nature of death, the nature of, yeah, of what time and light are. And
I
yeah,
absolutely have to watch that video now.
yeah,
And I'm also going to post a link to it in
okay.
the description of this.
Okay.
That's rich, and I'm excited to hear
I'll
it.
email it to you.
Yeah,
But
definitely should.
but but yeah,
I
it's
get
yeah.
excited every time anyone talks about time
Yeah.
because it's so strange. It's one of the things that I've picked up in doing these near-death experience interviews is how different time works here versus on the other side.
Yeah.
The best way I've heard it described was that there wasn't a past, present, and future. It was all past, present, and future all simultaneously existed in a perpetual unfolding of now. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I
And
like that.
so if you are to actually really wrap your mind around what that means, the past, present, and future all simultaneously existing, it's so difficult for so many people to even grasp
Yeah.
even a little bit, But for me, not only having the past experience that I had in psychedelics, but also how deeply immersed in this near death experience stuff that I am, because I have heard thousands of these stories. Today, you're the fourth person I've interviewed today.
Holy yeah.
Yeah. So, with how many times I hear different accounts, different perspectives of what that felt like and what that looks like, and how we try to wrap language and understanding around the absence of time,
Yeah.
of non-linear time. I over time, over our linear time, I feel like I can conceptualize that. Like I feel like I understand what it's like being outside of time.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite
I
things to talk about.
Yeah, and I feel like when I think about time, I have to remember that most people you talk to haven't experienced had a near-death experience or haven't had certain psychedelic experiences, or and so yeah, it is. If you came from a place like outside our circle or outside the near-death world or a psychedelic world, and people don't haven't felt that, like I get, yeah, that would be terrifying. That would be terrifying to not understand. But to me, it's so freeing.
And what you
Like this
said though is you are time.
You are the time.
You are the
You are the
time.
perfect amount of time. You are the time that you are here, and then you're gone and you're back. Yeah, and death is a transition from energy, and like we don't cease to be because energy can't cease to be. And you're back and came through strongly that there are other dimensions where we feel time, but not where we're from, kind of deal. Yeah, time is a always gets me. I mean, because so many of these DMT journeys and so many even you can get into some pretty big time holes on mushrooms.
One of my favorite thought experiments on the concept is that if the past, present, and future all simultaneously exist, right? When we think about the concept of reincarnation, we think of it in linear. People say past lives, right? And when you think about that, you're thinking about, looking back at the timeline, 1920s,
Right,
like
right,
I had a past life when I lived on a farm, and it's just like we think about it in this linear way. Outside of this dimension, though, if all of this is existing simultaneously, that we can incarnate into the bodies in which we are in now, right? But you could also incarnate the same individual in another body that was born maybe while you're still alive.
right. Or even on another type of creative planet.
Right, right.
You
And
know,
so I have lost somebody. I have somebody very dear, very close to my heart who has passed away. And I realize on a regular basis that I could literally encounter him reincarnated in anyone. A lot of people would think, okay, he died, and then after that date, somebody's born, he's reincarnated. I could meet him in another body that existed, was born, and living at the exact same time in which he was.
yeah, 100%. I have a very strong sense that like my mom is partly in my daughter. They're very similar in nature.
Was
And
your daughter born before or after your mother passed away?
well, she was born after. Yeah.
Okay, well then that kind of fits with that
But
linear thing that I was
that's
talking
the
about.
linear, but yeah, but I do know what you mean. I do know
Right.
what you mean. Yeah.
Right. And I do
Yeah.
not think that it's limited to that, you
It's
know? Isn't that an interesting thing, like thought experiment?
yeah, 100%. And you know, we
I
but
mean, I might
we're
cut that out because I feel like you get it, but a lot of people aren't going to get it.
yeah, we might be getting into the woods for a lot of people. I don't know.
Yeah, but
I don't know, but I
I
like it.
knew
I
that you
like
would
it.
get it.
Yeah, I like it. I could talk about that all night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we could talk again at some point about just more of that stuff too. Yeah. Well, should we wrap up?
I
We're about,
guess, yeah. I like to
yeah.
end on like a profound note, and that was a profound note, but it was a level expert. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else is gonna follow that.
Are you worried about your audience being exposed to like more your psychedelic stuff?
No,
And
no,
no, okay.
no. I know that.
You get
Um,
some, I've gotten some flack, just random comments. You get people who just don't understand.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
such a thick skin against that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, what's funny is that they rant. I'm gonna give you my negative opinion, but like, they're still like they're listening. They're still like watching my video. You know, it's
Yeah.
like
That's funny.
somebody
Yeah.
actually recently commented on one of my videos and said the giggles were just, or they said something really bad about like, I can't stand your giggling. Your giggling is awful or whatever. And then they said, and not to mention, it's just so hard to understand. I commented on that and I was like, your comment made me giggle. like,
That's perfect.
I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that if I were to filter what I put on my channel, I wouldn't be attracting my tribe, essentially.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's
yeah.
like the more transparent, the more authentic that I choose to be, the more that's going to translate to my listeners who are going to be like, you know what? I love how honest and unfiltered this person is, and they're in alignment with what I'm thinking and feeling. And it's like, I want those people to subscribe,
Yeah. And
you
it's like
know?
when you accept your truth and accept your, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, and you're able to be free in that, discuss all of it, that's when the enlightenment comes, and that's when you're truly able to help, just in general, help.
Yeah,
You know what
because
I
we
mean?
crave connection.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like if we're filtering ourselves, if our ego is driving too frequently, it's like we're going to miss out on those deep, authentic connections with people who are so similar to us, you know?
Yeah, we're all so different, but we're all like the same inside. We're all craving that same sense of security, love, and acceptance. And it's like, if you're brave enough to talk about that, well, you will be rewarded in life. And I'm not saying monetarily, and maybe monetarily, hopefully. Hopefully you can do well, very well. You know what I mean? I think you're going to do very well, but rewarded in the delight of the cosmos, the delight of creation. That's like the muse, you know? That's who we should
Amen.
be aiming to create for.
Yeah. And actually, I had a conversation with a friend of mine very recently that when I decided that I was going to live authentically to me and not continue to try to fit myself into this mold of societal expectation, when I threw all my stuff in a storage unit and embarked on this trip living out of my minivan, what it was me shedding all of those societal expectations and embracing the fact that up until this point in my life, I was 29 years old, that nothing had gone according to plan,
Yeah.
that I had this expectation that I was gonna have a career, I was gonna have a husband, and I was gonna have children, I was gonna have a house, and I was gonna have all these things. And I realized that I was continuing to try to force that, and it was against my nature. I was trying to fit into this mold of societal expectation, but my actual character, who I truly am, wanted something else, wanted adventure, wanted that freedom, wanted experience. And I was fighting myself. Like I was forcing relationships, forcing situations, thinking that there was something wrong with me,
Yeah. Right.
thinking that because I had this desire every 6 months or so to just experience something fresh, to like blow up everything, get a new job, move to a different place, give up on my relationship or whatever it was, that there was something wrong with me. And I realized that instead of trying to force myself to fit into society, I needed to cultivate my life to suit my personality. And when I did that, when I made that decision to live authentically for me, I started meeting my people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I found so many people since then that I have just immediately connected with and knew on a soul level. We have known each other. We have known
Yeah.
each other for eons. And what's funny though is because before that, I had a very, very hard time making friends.
Yeah.
I had spent years thinking like, it's just not the same as when we're in grade school and, you just go up to somebody and you just say, "Hey, do you want to be my friend?"
Right.
It was so easy. And
Yeah.
I thought it was the hardest thing as an adult trying to make friends. And I was always trying to, reach out and cultivate these deeper connections and relationships that were just, they would go nowhere,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But it was after I started living authentically for me that these people showed up in my life, that I found my people and I found my purpose. And then here I am sharing conversations and
Yeah.
finding more of my people, So
Yeah. No, I'm feeling the same thing about what I'm doing now. Because I only started this YouTube channel like 6 months ago. And that in my mind, I was like, okay, we're gonna start sharing our story, which is
yeah,
very hard for me. And I'm like
yes.
trying to get better and better at it, but I like still have I'm fighting that resistance at times and all of that. Like, and since I've started, I'm just like meeting you, like other people I'm chatting with. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, oh wow, I do have a community. It's funny that you said that. It's like I'm finally accepting. I finally like I've lived a really weird life, a really strange life. It's got to be for something. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
finally was like, you got to tell your story. It's like I have to like tell my story so that hopefully I can just like help someone, you know what I mean? Help someone feel better about like the nature of reality and existence and like give them a sense of the hope I felt from experiencing these things. And since I did that, it's been so freeing and so many beautiful souls just coming, like you
It's a
said, just like they're
magnetism.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome.
It's because you decided to live authentically for you
Yeah. Yeah.
in your
So I
essence.
so I feel what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to encourage everyone to do that. It's hard, but I think setting the example that we do, having these conversations, hopefully some people just by listening to this will be inspired to live more authentically for themselves too.
I hope so. And I always say, like, if I could tell you one thing to do to
Yeah.
feel better about yourself tomorrow, if you're really having a hard time in life, I've heard it said, and it's so true, the most selfish thing you can do is go volunteer.
The most
Go,
selfish?
yes, because literally that's kind of a joke, but because it instantly makes you feel good. It's just this sense of purpose, the sense of doing something right. If you're feeling like total shit, if you're depressed, you don't know what to do, go help someone. Go down to a soup kitchen. Go do something that gives you to others, and you will come home that night feeling good about yourself.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can do, but that's one quick thing you can do is start volunteering.
A good quick fix. We all like
Yeah.
quick fixes.
And it helps the world. So,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have this
This
conversation with
was
me.
super fun, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. If you loved this episode, please consider leaving a review. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so we don't lose each other. And to share the link with somebody who can appreciate this message. Blessings to you all, and I hope to catch you on my next episode.